The true Americans. The European colonists took over and started calling themselves Americans and started changing the history, saying that they brought us here. We were always here. We were always here. You've got pyramid kuntas in Central South America that are older than the pyramids in Giza in Misraim that the people call Egypt. Older. You've got civilization principles that are here in Lower Egypt that you call Kentucky and Tennessee area that is older than they are in what you call Egypt. But those things are held secret because they don't want these people to know that they're the heirs apparent to this land, so they branded them Negro, black, and colored to cut off the linear history. So when the people think they're Negro, black, and colored, they can't tie to the illustrious history of the founders of civilization. As a matter of fact, they keep trying to leave and everybody else trying to come here because they don't even know that this is the hub, the North Gate. We're the true Americans.
Anyone, whether you're a Moor, you've been studying for a while, or even people who are new to this, because we're going to trace ourselves back through history right here. All right? But I want you to hear this first so that as we trace ourselves back through history, you'll understand, okay, so this was what this man named Noble Drew Ali, this is what he brought to our people in the 1920s, right? You see this black and white photo, 1928. This is what, and I don't even know if he graduated high school, right? He probably didn't. I mean, I don't know because there's no records of it. So he probably didn't even go to high school. And yet, this is the information and the understanding that he's bringing to our people that, hey, you know, this is who our ancestors are. And that they've been over here, even in the Americas, since before the earthquake that caused the Atlantic Ocean. He's letting people know that the rivers are man-made. The Nile River was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade. And it extended eastward from the river Nile, westward across the great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. That extending westward across the great Atlantic. This may explain why within the Atlantic Ocean, right, you have the ocean streams, these underwater river currents. And so the sailors, they knew this. I mean, they still know it today, to get on that current, and it'll ride them to their destination faster. It'll get them to where they're going faster. So there's underwater river currents in the ocean. And so he's saying that this is man-made. And so this river was created. And when the earthquake happened, which caused the great Atlantic, it just stretched across this gap, you know, that was filled in by the water. That became the Atlantic Ocean. It was still there. The river's still there. It's just underwater now. And it was used for trade and transportation. So trade was taking place not only within the huge continent of Africa, but also across the Atlantic with the Americas. And this is why you will have corn, right, being talked about in ancient Egypt. And corn is important because corn is indigenous to the Americas. Like, how do they even know about this if they're limited to that one part of the world? They ain't even have the knowledge of how to travel across the ocean. How would they know about corn? And so there's other crops and things too that they had in different parts of the world. And this is because the trade was taking place before the Europeans were able to participate in international trade. That's how come you had this cross-cultural thing going on. They also have the cocaine mummies, which you can do some research on your own. So they found these mummies in Egypt. They had traces of cocaine on them, which is, you're talking about coming from somebody saying they can't hear the audio. The audio good? Somebody else, please chime in. Is the audio good? Audio good, Morris? Everybody else good? Somebody give me some feedback. Let me know if you can hear that audio. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, they found mummies in Egypt. They had cocaine literally in the mummies, on the mummies, and they know that cocaine came from the eastern part of South America. Okay? Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, right? So the trade was taking place. And it was taking place long before the Europeans found out about the Americas. So we're gonna turn that mic up. Is that louder? We louder? We good? Okay. So just going back to this. Like I said, though, remember this. I want you to remember what's being spoken about here, because this man in the 1920s was teaching this hidden history to our people before the internet, when it was all easy, where you could just go look at videos and stuff talking about this, right? So all these people that want to disrespect the Moors, disrespect the prophet now, they all of a sudden they know they're indigenous. Guess what? This is where it came from. He was teaching this back then. So I want you to remember this, because like I said, we're going to trace ourselves. So he's saying that our people came over here, received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt. First off, you got that Egyptian connection, and that they are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. According to all, skipping down to 9, according to all true and divine records of the human race, there's no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family. So that means even foundational Black American, right? ADOS, all of that mess. Come on, man, drop it. Because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the holy land of Canaan. So no true Moors will be up here saying, no, we're not African. Why would you say that when we're in Northwest Amexem right now? Amexem's the first true and divine name of Africa. And what your forefathers were, you are today, without doubt or contradiction. So he's letting it be known, even though we've been tricked out of our line of descent, tricked out of who we truly are, history, families broken up, all types of things we've been through, but everyone goes through atrocities, right? So even though we've gotten to this point now, we are still who our ancient forefathers were. That's what we still are today, without doubt or contradiction. And this is why he can declare our nationality, declare our independence, our nation, and be unimpeded upon. We have an Islamic nation state right here. It's in disarray, but it's coming together. And this is why we can do this unimpeded upon. Nobody can stop us. We don't have to stay in a slave, semi-human status just because some people don't want us to rise up. They can't do nothing to stop us. We have that human right. Basic rights that was even declared in the United Nations UN DRIP, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Every people has the right to self-determination, unimpeded upon by others, including colonizers, right? You can't keep them in that status forever. So we had a right to do this. Nobody can impede upon it. And just so you can see a visual of what's discussed in that chapter 47 about our people being in here. If you look on the right, where you see an example of how North and South America fit into Europe and Africa, right? Just for that visual, saying that our people, right, we're here, the Dominion, we're over here in North, South, and Central America, Mexico, and the Atlantic Islands before that great earthquake which caused the Atlantic Ocean. There was a newspaper article a few years ago, I think it was New York Times, where it was saying that they have like geological surveys and studies that show that New Jersey used to be connected to Morocco. New Jersey. Okay, and you see on this map depiction on the right how it fits in there. Okay, I just wanted to show that, just to show, that this is just explaining how that happened. Even on here, you see where the purple line is the Nile River, and you see this other purple line on the right is the Niger River, and how the Niger River potentially used to connect to the Amazon River. So when it split apart, those ocean currents that you see that are in the Atlantic, right? It's still connected to this day. All right. So the Moroccan Empire is northwest of Maxim, which you could say is Northwest Africa, and that's true because you have Morocco, and now Trump recognized the sovereignty of Morocco over this new nation they created called Western Sahara. So you have all that. Plus you have Mauritania. Mauritania is over there, Northwest Africa, where the Atlas Mountains are. So on one hand, that's all part of the Moroccan Empire. But on the other hand, right, we came over here and we are of this same line of descent. And so the Moroccan Empire is right here where we are. But want to go back on to go back into the history. Right now, what you're seeing just on the screen, like on the left, you see the three noblemen. Okay. And I can't remember the book that I first saw this picture in, where you had these three Incan noblemen. But the first time I ever saw that, right, and I'm like, wow, like, you know, they don't look like what you usually see as indigenous people. And it said that they were Inca noblemen, which Incan, that means you're talking about the indigenous people from Peru. And it said that they were Incan noblemen and that they must have been escaped slaves. Like that was in this book that I saw a long time ago. I wish I could still have it because that doesn't even make any sense. Like how would escaped slaves rise up to become nobility within the indigenous people, right? Because, you know, to be of the nobility class, you have to know your lineage. That's one of the things that makes people of that lineage of a noble class, that they know their lineage. To be there was this one book from Voltaire that I read years ago, and it's funny because they had a story about a European lady who was sold into slavery by the Moors, but she was speaking on how there was a guy she wanted to marry and she couldn't marry him because he could only go back like 3 generations. So obviously she was of a higher class than him, right? She was of noble class because she could go back like 20 or 30 generations. All right. So there's no way. I mean, I'm not saying that people can rise up from slavery in different times in history, just saying that this is the reason people would put that image on us is because they associate Negro, Black with slavery. So these are Incan noblemen, right? And they're of African descent, obviously. And this was painted in 1599. So at that point in time, this is what the Incan noblemen looked like. Right? Like it says in this description, they're depicted wearing Spanish clothing, but with Inca gold adornments. And then captioned with Spanish names, the 3 Dons, Don Francisco, and, you know, right? So these are noblemen, the noble class of Peru. Remember that, though, the noble class of Peru. We're going to come back to that, too. You see this also, this is on the right. It's just a section of a longer painting showing like the lineage of descent of the kings of Peru. And so this is the last indigenous king of Peru. And then the one on the right of him is the first Spanish king of Peru. Right. So you got Ato, Paul, Inca, and then you got Carlos Quinto, who was Spanish. And I mean, the quality is not good, but you can see they both look alike. Right? Why? Because many of the Spanish and Portuguese that came over here at that point in time were of Moorish descent. Why would they be participating in the conquest of another people? Because, all right, if you're looking at this, you know, happening around the 1500s, right? Maybe 100 years prior to that, late 1400s, Spanish or Moorish Spain fell to the Spaniards. And all of the Moors who didn't flee or who weren't killed, they had to convert to Christianity, the Moriscos. They had to swear their allegiance to the Queen and the Pope, right? Queen Isabella, King Ferdinand. So you had people who were of Moorish descent who were dark-skinned people. They were Christians. They were Moriscos. Matter of fact, when Columbus came over here, the people, the brothers, the Nino brothers owned the boats that he was on. Right? So, and these Nino brothers, they were brothers. They were Asiatic. They were Moriscos. Right? These are dark-skinned people of Moorish descent. And I'm just saying this to say these are people who went ahead, converted to Christianity, right? Swear their allegiance so that they could stay in their homeland. Because you're talking about the Moors ruled Spain for almost 800 years. They don't know anything else. This is where they're from. I'm not making excuses for anything. I'm just showing you. So this is one way that they were able to come and take over, right? So you have, of course, they're bringing the warriors, the guerreros, the conquistadors with them, but also they look like the people that they're coming to conquer. They have ties, blood ties. Okay. So moving forward. Now I wanted you to remember the Peruvians, right? So you see the three Incan noblemen, then you see these Incan noblemen, these kings. All right. So the headdress that was worn over here by the nobility in Peru. Peru is in South America. This is important. This on the upper left-hand corner, this is taken from the book Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx, and that was written by Augustus Le Plongeon. Now he's speaking about some of the different Europeans who came into contact with the Peruvians, and it's saying Garcilaso de la Vega, Cieza de Leon, Acosta, and other writers on Peruvian customs and manners inform us that the fringe and tassel of the Yantu, royal headdress of the Incas, were made of fine crimson wool. So the royal headdress of the Inca was made of fine crimson wool. Fine crimson wool are fezzes. Matter of fact, Moors, make sure you go to moorishfez.com because the fezzes that we have sound just like the royal headdress of the Incas. Just like it. It says it's fine crimson wool. Crimson is dark red. Wool, our fez is 100% wool. And then it has a tassel. Same thing. We have that right now. That's what we have. And so when you're looking at this, you're talking about the nobility of Peru was wearing the same thing that our prophet returned to us. This is not a joke. This is why I'm saying we can trace ourselves back through history. So everybody, all Moors, make sure you go to moorishfez.com to get your fez. That's moorishfez.com. And as you can see, this is pretty much a description of the royal headdress of the Incas. Fine crimson wool. This fez is 100% wool. And then the fringe and tassel. You see the tassel right there. Okay? These are actual pictures of our fezzes. This is what they look like. This is what you get when you go to moorishfez.com. Fine crimson wool, and you see that long tassel. Okay? And so the indigenous people over here in the Americas have been wearing this royal headdress. And when we say this, we're talking about the nobility. The nobility. This is the headdress, the royal headdress of the noble class. Not just saying this to try to make people feel good. I can't make that up. I didn't make that up. Right? So you see the example. If you want to, you can get that book, Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx. If you want to know more about it, the guy who wrote it, Augustus Le Plongeon, this is somebody who spent years in the Yucatan, years in Central and South America doing physical excavations. He actually taught himself the languages, learned the hieroglyphs that the Mayans and Olmecs were using, right? So this isn't just like some, crazy talk. And this guy, the stuff that Augustus Le Plongeon was writing, these books were being eaten up by the Rosicrucians. Right? They couldn't wait to get a hold of his material because he was doing the physical work to make the connections and understandings that they needed. Right? And so that was just the Peru, the noble class in Peru. But then if you look over here in the upper right-hand corner, you see this Egyptian statue. And once again, the noble class in Egypt were wearing the fez. That's a fez. I'm just so glad that the color was retained because it's dark red. Once again, go to morrisfez.com to get your fez. What are our fezes? Dark red. 100% wool, just like that. You see this carved in stone. Same color as the fez that I have on my head. Okay? You're looking down here in the left-hand corner. You see the the Easter Island heads. So there's these things are tall and they weigh several tons, right? And then they made sure on some of these statues or many of the statues that they actually carved this headdress on them, right? And then it's like red volcanic rock. So this is something that we've been doing. And the prophet returned this to us. And this is why it's important for us to come online and come into being who we truly are, because this is holding back the entire world, right? It's time for these lies to come down. You also see an example with the Olmec head. So with the Olmec heads, you had some that had straight up cornrows in their hair. Then you have some wearing what looks like a headdress with tassels and then possibly a turban wrapped around the bottom. Okay. And then if you know who you are, you can go back and trace yourself through history.